After a long, long, long wait, we finally have live sports to report on. Hello, I'm Siobhan Nolan.
And I'm Tyler Small. The wait was so long, I found the time to spend hours upon hours constructing this Lego AT-AT Star Wars replica. I'm just about done, but then I just realized there's sports to talk about. So let's get to it. You're watching LaSalle TV's home for Explorer Athletics SportsLine.
Welcome to SportsLine. This week, we're bringing you the scores from the men's and women's basketball games as their season has finally kicked off.
And later, I sat down with Kale Beers to see what it's like covering sports when you can't be on the sidelines.
But before we get into all that, let's catch you up on our men's and women's basketball teams, how they did in their opening weekend.
The men's basketball team didn't get an ideal start to the season, falling to St. John's in their 2020-21 opener. St. John's took a 7-1 lead early in the game, but sophomore Sharif Kenny connected on a three-pointer to bring the score to a 7-4. The following minutes were a defensive battle, with redshirt junior Clifton Moore blocking 3 attempts by the Red Storm, along with nabbing a three-pointer to put the game to 22-17. Despite freshman Jameer Brickus opening up the second half with a bucket, St. John's put up a double-digit deficit for the rest of the game. LaSalle fought hard in the last few minutes of the game, with senior David Beatty putting on the score is 69-61 with a steal and a layup, but 26 total turnovers were given by the Explorers, and that was a part of their downfall. The Explorers had 13 steals of their own, while 4 of LaSalle players reached double figures in scoring, with Akeem, Brickus, and sophomore Christian Ray scoring 12 points, while Sharif Kenny scored 10.
On the final day of the Joe Lapchick tournament, the men's basketball team suffered a defeat against St. Peter's. The Explorers started the game strong with a 10-2 burst, where they connected on 4 of their first 7 field goal attempts. Freshman Jameer Brickus sank a three-pointer to put the score at 16-8, but St. Peter's came back to take a 2-point lead at intermission. Junior Jared Kimbrough tied the game at 23 with a layup, but the Peacocks quickly jumped ahead 32-25. A Brickus layup put the contest at 40-34, but St. Peter's once again pulled ahead, putting the score at 49-34. The difference remained in double digits the rest of the game, and the Explorers ended up on the wrong side of a 62-51 defeat. Sophomore Ayinde Hakeem was the main distributor for the Explorers, assisting 6 times in 19 minutes, while junior Clifton Moore had 9 points, 5 rebounds, 2 blocks, and averaged 2.5 blocks per game during the tournament. The men's team will be back on the court against Army at West Point on December 6th.
The women's basketball team dropped their season opener against Towson on Monday, but freshman Jay Hayes scored an astounding 16 points in her collegiate debut. Senior Haley Hill and Deja King combined to keep the game close at 9-6, but the Tigers lead 25-13 at the end of the first quarter. Towson kept their lead at the intermission, closing out the first half with a 44-32 lead. The Explorers ended the third period trailing 69-49 and finished the game losing 95-66. Hayes led the Explorers on 5 of 11 shooting, while Hill scored a career-high 10 points and tied her rebounds with 6 in her start. So a lot of good stuff that came from the 3 losses. Of course, 0-3 is not ever what you want, Siobhan, but starting with the men's side, 2 games that get to this tournament, and this is a little bit of a teaser of when we go to the Kale interview, but any game outside of A10 play really is a bonus. So the fact that they're getting any of these games in, first and foremost, is exciting just to see our team back on the court, but just to get that outside experience, because we know it all comes down to it when A10 play starts.
Exactly. And, it was good. It was a good way for them to just get used to being back on the court and playing these real games. When researching these games, we saw a lot of really strong individual performances, a lot of players on both the men's and women high scoring. So I think once the rust is shaken off and they get used to being back on the court and playing these games, we'll be seeing a lot better results. Because even then this week, the women's won against Towson The men are taking on Army at West Point on December 6th. So I think that we're still going to see strong performances in the future.
Exactly. And I'm glad you brought that point to both points, actually, because the men's and women's side, not so much, but the men's side, you could either call it a problem or a solution. Again, Kale says that this is something that the Explorers need to have, which is just a definite number one guy, a definite number one scorer. Every single game last season, and we see it again this year as Scott Spencer led the game with 11 points in the St. Peter's loss, and Ayinde Hakeem led with 14 points in the St. John's loss. So you see a plethora of guys. I mean, up and down. I think it's a strength because if you're an opposing coach, you don't know what's the game plan for. You don't know who their number one guy is. It's tough when you get kind of lost in the roles of who's taking that final shot. Is always the expression everyone uses. But I think that just on both sides, McGilvery and Howard, they really give everyone the opportunities, and it really is just a tight bond to know what each and every player is going to do. And just that everyone has an opportunity to get that final shot and to contribute to the game, whether it's the first points of the game or the last. So you see a lot of that. There's a lot of great things to come from, and I think it's led by the freshmen on both sides, men and women's.
Absolutely, because we're seeing a bunch of these really great freshmen coming out of their debut. And, Jared Kimbrough was saying for the men's basketball, they have a lot of great talent that's working well with the veteran talent. So, once they can really gel as a team, get used to being back out together and, just really get together as a team and just really put those performances forward, it's really going to be an exciting season because there are just so many strong individual players that once they come together as a team, I mean, they're really going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah. No, I mean, you said it best. And a lot of games to be played, of course, a lot of gelling to be had, but something, again, I said in the interview, it's just, if you can mesh this year, because it's a long journey that's going to be happening, obviously. A lot of these players are going to be around for the long haul, as of course we hope, but looks that way. Once you see what it's like this year and compare it to the rest of the seasons, if we do go back to a normal, of course, but if you're able to mesh and combine this season where you're putting the team literally above everything else, like above every asset of it, just to have this season come together and really making a sacrifice player by player, it's just going to be so evident 2, 3, 4 years even down the road when these players just have this chemistry built in. They have this longevity to their reputations and their careers, and it's going to be a really exciting thing to see in the Salle area soon.
Oh yeah, because even though that these score lines, the deficit was in the double digits, they were really hard fought and close for a lot of these games. So it shows that no matter how late in the game it is, these guys and our women's team are really willing to come together and just fight every last minute of the game. So, individual talent and that just winning mentality and that wanting to fight until the very last second is just going to take them even further to the top.
Couldn't agree with you more, Siobhan. So now we're going to send it to this week's edition of On the Sideline, as so teased earlier before. We got to talk to the voice of the Explorers this week, Kale Beers, who had to trade in his normal seat of the game on the sideline, the opposing sideline, of course. But this year it was a little bit different. Let's send it to that interview to send you a little bit more. Hello, welcome to this week's edition of On the Sideline. Today we are joined by someone that comes to you on the sideline, but just on the opposite sideline of who we usually talk to. It is the voice of the Explorers, Kale Beers. Kale, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man. It's great.
Right, well, we'll dive right into it. The 2020-2021 Division I season for the men and women's team started. Men had 2 games this past week against St. John's and St. Peter's. We'll get into those recaps both in the episode and throughout this conversation. But before that, we had a very different experience for you. Talk a little bit about what that was like, having to do this game remote.
It was, from a standpoint of the guy that was crawling around the comm center my senior year, wiring stuff and helping set the studio up with Sid McLeod and Tanya Ellis and stuff. Like, it was fun trying to figure out how to do this, and seeing where the technology has come is really exciting, that we could do something like a remote broadcast, and that Zoom is just in everybody's life now. But it wasn't fun. I mean, calling the game is always fun, But and it's a great pleasure to do that. I can't say it wasn't fun. It's just that it was really hard. It was really difficult. Uh, it was a mental exhaustion because I had a lot of. I don't know if you saw what I put on Twitter. I can send you the picture of my set. There's like 5 screens and a mixer and an iPad, and there's a lot of things going on, and I'm the only one in there. Usually I have an engineer courtside, and he's usually has it all set up, and I get there and I can shake hands with donors up until almost tip off and sit down and call a game. Now I'm the only one, and making sure that all the levels are going well, that we're connected, that it's going not only over when we zoomed it, not only over Zoom, but also over the audio stream. It was challenging, and I love game day. You know, I'm a gym rat. I started riding the bus when I was in 5th grade as a ball boy for a high school basketball team. I love riding the bus. I'm 49 years old, and I love riding the bus. Most people my age are tired of it. I love it. I love being around the team. I love being in hotels. I don't love being away from my family, but aside from that, I love the whole experience of basketball. And the thing I love almost as much as that is I love being with our people, our alums, our season ticket holders, our fans. I mean, I really get a rush out of seeing people at games. So without that, it's really difficult. But we got hoops, and that's better than that. And all that I'm saying pales in comparison to the struggles that people are going through with COVID. So you keep everything in perspective. Woohoo! I don't get to go to basketball games. I still get to call games, which is really exciting. But the best part of it is the people and the experience of being in the gym. And I can't wait for that to happen again.
I mean, trust me, I can't speak from experience for being on the bus, but just from working with you at games and just watching the interactions you have with everyone behind you, around the stadium, it's almost like you're running back up and down the court 20 times a game. It's fun to watch. So I can only imagine. We'll hopefully get you back to that soon. There's a lot we want to.
Well, to me, I'm sorry, but to me, that's a big part of the experience. I mean, I love being a play-by-play guy, and that's what I came into this professional world to do. That's what I've been wanting to do since I was 5 years old. But as you get more involved in the school and what we're trying to do as a university, you realize that it's about the people. It's about our fans and our alums. So as a fundraiser, I explain to people all the time, like, we want you to write checks, but we want you to come back to games. We want you to come back to campus. We want you to employ our grads. We want you to interview more LaSalle people for open positions, because otherwise, without the people, we're not a real institution. That's what, and we are, that's our strength, is our people. And so having those people at games, I honestly, like, I'd run back and forth because someone might have come in after tip off and I want to say hi. So I'll run up into the stand, say, "What's going on? How you doing?" And I'm getting goosebumps talking. I love that stuff. I really do.
Oh yeah. And that's so great to see, because it really does make the experience better for everyone. And I know personally, I'm a couple years away from graduation. I know relationships like that will probably benefit me down the road. So I appreciate that from a personal standpoint. But,
absolutely.
Well, so going back to the remote broadcast of everything, before we get into all of that and the games themselves, talk about, in comparison, what your normal routine is like getting ready for an in-person game and how different that was. Because I'm sure you had to do a lot more of the technical side for this remote broadcast instead of what probably would have been your actual game plan. So talk about what the differences were like.
Well, the good thing is that my lineage as a broadcaster was in minor league baseball broadcasting. So for 142 nights a year back in the day, I lugged the gear off the bus. I set it up. I broke it down every night sometimes. So I'm used to kind of being solitary. Now, as my role at LaSalle has evolved, broadcasting is almost like an add-on portion of my job. My primary job is as a fundraiser. They work very synchronous. It's a very good relationship, because being the play-by-play voice gives me exposure to many people, and people know me that maybe I've never met because they've been listening to me for years. So it makes conversations easier to happen. So as it's evolved over the last couple of years as a fundraiser, and having, Marty Dickerson was our on-site engineer, he would set everything up, and that would allow me to be downstairs in the tent with alums, or making sure that if somebody is only in for one game, that they're getting to their parking spot, or and spending as much time. Now, and when I'm around the team as much as I am, I don't have to prep a whole lot, because I I live with the team basically. I have to know what's going on with the other team. Now, preparing for college basketball is way easier than minor league baseball. So I don't think I have the type of amount of preparation to broadcast that most broadcasters do. I also think a lot of broadcasters overdo it because college basketball is a pretty quick hitting game, and a play-by-play guy, I call it, I see it, I let Plenty fill in the gaps, and then I call it and I see it. And I'm not trying to dazzle you with a bunch of arcane stats and things like that. So that's just not my style. I'm an energy guy as it is to be doing. So I don't do on the road, I do a lot more preparation because I have time in the hotel and, you're at a new arena and stuff like that. But at home, I spend a great deal of time and the on-court, the people that sit on court they're a part of a ground force giving level. So those aren't their actual seats because they don't pay for seats. They make a donation and they get access to the best seats we have. So knowing who's going to show up on a nightly basis is a big part of what I do and where they're going to sit. Is Lionel Simmons going to sit in his seats or is he going to sit back here? Who does Larry Barron have coming in his spot? And I got to make sure that Tony Mazzi's in town. I want to see him. That's like my whole day with like at lunchtime on the bike looking at the rosters and looking at stats, and stuff like that. But so a lot of that. So when I have to set up the gear, I can do it. It's easy. Sometimes I do it just because I want to walk away from my desk and give Marty a break when he shows up and he can just kind of make sure everything's going. But yeah, so then, when tip off happens, I pretty much focus on the game except for timeouts when I'm running around. And then post game, is communication with the donors and alums as much as I can. Hey, tough one tonight, or good seeing you tonight, or who's going to come to next week's game. And another part, I always try to talk to Ash Howard pre-game, so we record that interview, we upload it online. And tweeting's a big, tweeting and Instagramming and Facebooking. We all know it's a big part of it. It's actually kind of a real cumbersome part of my job because I feel like we have to constantly remind people that we're live, second half starting. I've got a great halftime interview tonight. I got so-and-so calling in from Germany, or Ramon Galloway is going to be here, or something like that. You want people to know. So that's like a real ambitious part of it. And sometimes I don't get around to that. And then I feel like, I wish I would have promoted it more, that we talked to Isaiah Dees tonight pregame or something like that. So that's become a big part of it. And I try to schedule tweets throughout the game. Like I pre-schedule them at around 5 o'clock. Or no, actually I do it like in the morning sometimes, like all day long, my tweets like, hey, game day, don't forget, blah, blah, blah. Because in the type of world we live in, people can easily forget that we're going to play tonight. And I want to constantly remind them, that either get to the game or if not, listen to me.
Yeah. Yeah, but I was actually curious about that because I do see you firing off tweets while you're in the middle of talking about the game. You're just on every facet of it. So that's interesting. So
yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll do it on the fly. I'll do it live if something really cool happened, particularly when the St. Bonaventure fans are giving me a lot of guff on Twitter. I sometimes will go back at them live just to show them that I can. But no, you got to concentrate on the game when it's actually happening.
Right. Well, love a little battle on and off the court. I like that.
Yeah.
So when you talk about your connection with the team, and that I think is also, I don't know how it goes for anyone else in college basketball, but just overall, the play-by-play and color guys never really have as similar of a bond, it seems like, because sometimes they're not as ambiguous with the players because, sometimes you have to call it how it is, and sometimes they don't have a good performance, and the player doesn't like to necessarily always hear that. So how different is that to have such a strong relationship with these guys since you're going 20, 30 games with them?
To me, it's a critical part. I mean, it's why I love being around True Mark. In my line of work as a fundraiser, I'm out a lot late at night with people at dinners or get drinks, or I get off the road. But I almost always still try to be in pretty early in the morning after a game day because I like being around, and not just the basketball players. Like I love seeing our student athletes. I love getting to know them as well as I can. I love going down to Paul Royal's office and sitting on his couch and seeing what's going on with their game. I love same thing, with the strength room, anybody. Like I just love being on a campus, and I love getting to, because at the end of the day, as much as I'm unashamedly and unabashedly still a fan, I'm still a fan of the Explorers. Like it's my job and I got to raise money, but I still get emotionally invested. You see me at a soccer game when I have my twins, I'm loud and because it matters that much. And I still like the idea of the competition. But at the end of the day, what we're here to do is we're here to educate people and give them a chance at improving their life with a great job, with great relationships, with great experience. And so to see any student athlete come in, or any student in general, but obviously I have more exposure to the student athletes. Yeah, as young freshmen, like we were when we were freshmen, and I was a little older because I was in the Army first, but and then just to grow up into men, and then to see them, and women, and to see them come back 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, like Paul Johnson and I are super good friends. I mean, super good friends, and that's just one example. I mean, we talk we almost text each other every weekend because he's a Redskins fan and I'm an Eagles fan, and usually the ribbing is over by the end of week 2 because the Eagles are clearly way better than the Redskins, and so he has nothing to argue about anymore. So usually, but
usually,
and that's the type. And wherever I go, whether it's in Washington D.C. or Charlotte or St. Louis, it's great that after 25 years to have someone that's going to come out to the game and see us, and to me that's what going to college is for. That's what it's all about. Yes, I love basketball. Yes, I love all sports. Yes, I want to win every time we play. But at the end of the day, I want LaSalle to be as prominent as possible, as great of an institution as possible. Athletics gives us a chance to give us to put a great face for our university out to the world. And so, at the end of the day, it's all about the student athletes and them maturing and growing and becoming successful mothers, fathers, CEOs, or whatever it is. So to me, it's a big deal. Now, as far as saying things that might not be favorable, I had a hard time early in my career when I was in minor league baseball. I didn't have a great relationship with the players because I was too honest and I took it too personally. Like I was too much of a fan. Like I got really upset when we stranded 8 runners that night, or we walked another another leadoff hitter or something like that. And those guys who are 18, 21-year-old, they didn't like hearing that. The difference between then I thought I was the next Harry Kalas and the next network broadcaster. And I was, trying to preserve my journalistic purity. And I still believe that's something that I need. I'm all right with being a homer, but you got to be able to trust what I'm saying is true. And at the end of the day, I'm working for LaSalle. I'm not working for a network. When it is the ESPN Plus branded games, I try to bring it more to the center and not drop as many POWs. But I try to be a little bit more objective because I know that other fans are listening to that, and we're trying to be somewhat neutral. But when I'm not, I'm a LaSalle guy, and these are our people. Now, what's the difference is these are not professionals. These are young adults that have exams and debt and family problems and girlfriend or boyfriend problems and all the struggles that all of us have as student athletes. So when they do go 66% from the free throw line, yeah, it's annoying. It's really difficult to see, but I'm not going to crush them like a professional athlete because they're ours. They're our people. They're LaSallians. They're my brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews in my case, with the age differential. But, and so to me, that's a difference. So I want you to know that I'm telling you the truth and I'm not just going to paint everything clean, but I'm going to do it in a way that's not going to be disrespectful to our student athletes.
Great. No, that's a perfect way to put everything into perspective. I like that. So let's quickly, before we wrap this up, go into the actual basketball that was at hand. Unfortunately, both games did not go LaSalle's way, but there were a lot of great points to take away from it. What do you think is some of the things that we could take from these 2 losses into the rest of the season positively?
This is really hard because I watched it on a TV screen like the rest of you, and I haven't been to practice. I've usually spent at least a couple hours a week at practice, seeing what they're trying to do and what they're trying to pull off and what the mood is. I have none of that. Like, I don't know. I know what I saw what you saw. So, what I can tell, what I would observe is that I'm not too frustrated. I mean, normally, Los St. Peter's, I'd be waking up at 3 a.m. like just stressed, like just what's going on. Not that I'm not upset about it. I am upset about it, but to me, everything's in perspective. I mean, I know everybody's dealing with COVID. I know that, of course, every team's dealing with COVID. St. Peter's and St. John's did it too. But to me, this non-conference schedule is however many games we play is a bonus. Mm-hmm. It's a blessing to play games. We didn't have a constructed non-conference schedule that was going to put us in a likely. Well, maybe we would if we played all the games and we went around the table, we'd probably be in a ranked situation or in a an at-large situation for whatever that's going to look like. But given the composition of our team, the news of our team, that probably wasn't in the cards this year anyway. So to me, to get bent out of shape over 2 games, we're playing 8, 10, 11 guys, and I just think there's a lot of figuring out to do. There's a lot of figuring out to do. 2 of those guys haven't played in 16 to 24 months of their life. They've grown a lot since then. The speed of the game is something you cannot replicate in practice. So it's a bummer. 26 turnovers is really difficult to watch. But do I think am I on the ledge? No, not at all. I mean, I've seen this team improve every year since Asher's been there, and there's a lot of things that are still coming together. So I'm very optimistic about everything. I mean, I love that Jack Clark hasn't hit his groove yet, and Clifton Moore probably hasn't hit his groove yet. I love what we're seeing out of Brickus. We'll get a chance to see what Anwar Gill looks like, and the other 2 freshmen as well at some point. And at some point there's got to be cohesion, and it's not there right now. That's all there's to it. It's not, to me, it's nothing more than just a very unusual season. And every game we play in the non-conference to me is a bonus. We're just lucky to have games because, as we're seeing now, you never know when the next game's going to be bumped or pushed. So to me, it's almost like a non-factor. It's all going to be about what happens in conference play, unless we were sitting at 5-0 right now. Unless we were sitting at 5-0, and we weren't going to have an at-large bid unless we ran the table, assuming we played all those games. So to me, to get too bent out of shape at this point is not something I'm prepared to do.
Yeah, I know that's a great point. I mean, very young team. Chemistry still needs to come in. But if one thing I've said throughout all of this is if they can build chemistry throughout this year, anything's possible. This team will be phenomenal down the road. So a lot to learn.
There's so much talent. There's so much talent on this team. And I think that might be the problem. Last year, and we talked about this in the virtual open practices. Last year, it was great. I think like 5 out of the first 7 games was a different leading score. That's cool. That's really exciting. But when you don't have a continuity, then nobody knows the role definition. Nobody knows. And so I think we're kind of at that stage right now. It's that we need to get the wins. Last year we got the wins despite not having that continuity. And I think it hurt a little bit later on down the line. I think Ash and I talked about that in pregame shows a lot last year. So I think that's where we're at right now, except that, listen, St. Peter's obviously is not going to excite anybody as far as an opponent, but they're good. They have talent on that team. They weren't just sitting there expecting to lose to LaSalle. They came and they brought it, and they got it together before we did. So I think, you'll see this team gel. And the bottom line is we're really young. And like you said, once this comes together, it's going to look really good. It's going to be good for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll have a lot of good things to see down the road. Kale, I got to cut this short, but this has been awesome, man. Thank you so much for the time and sitting down with us.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. And with that, we will send it back to the desk.
That just about wraps it up for us this week. Keep up with the upcoming sporting events by visiting goexplorers.com or check out this week's edition of the Collegian.
Also, check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/LaSalleTV and on Twitter and Instagram at SportsLine LTV. We welcome you to send your thoughts and suggestions there.
For Kale Beers and our SportsLine team, I'm Siobhan Nolan.
And I'm Tyler Small. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you at the game.